Hello, this is Chris Heasley with the Chris Heasley Radio Show. John Parker is one of the most interesting Texas Rangers to ever exist. He was an American frontiersman who had experience as a soldier and a scout and who had successfully negotiated several treaties with American Indian tribes. Due to his extensive experience on the American frontier and working with Indian tribes, he was selected for one of the most daring missions, which was to establish a settlement deep in the heart of Comanche territory. The idea was to build a fortified settlement that would serve as an outpost for Texans so that they could begin living peacefully in what could be considered at the time as the most dangerous part of the American frontier. And Parker did just that. He built Fort Parker. Fort Parker was located in north central Texas in what is today Limestone County, and it was completed in 1834. It had 12-foot high walls encompassing 4 square acres of land, and John Parker would bring his entire family to live with him in this fort. Unfortunately, the Comanche had something to say about that, and in 1836, a coalition of more than 100 fighters of Comanche, of Kiowa, of Kichai, the Kichai fighters, arrived at the fort and decimated the settlement in what would be known as the Fort Parker Massacre. Several Texans were taken captive, including John Parker's granddaughter, and she would become a historical figure for the state of Texas. Her name was Cynthia Parker. Cynthia Parker was 9 years old, and she was captured. And while the other captives were returned to the Texans, the Comanche fell in love with Cynthia, and she would become one of theirs forever. She was now a Comanche. Cynthia was quickly adopted by a Comanche family. She embraced Comanche life, learning all of the customs of being a Comanche young girl and eventually a Comanche woman. She would marry a prominent Comanche chief by the name of Peta Nocona. And while it was custom for the chiefs to take more than one wife, Peta Nocona would only marry Cynthia. She was quite a remarkable woman. Her marriage to Peta Nocona placed her in a position of prominence with the tribe. Her and Peta would have 3 children, including Quanah. Quanah would become one of the most prominent Comanche chiefs. Quanah would later in life lead diplomatic efforts between the Comanche and the Americans. He was recognized by President Teddy Roosevelt for his efforts of bringing peace and relations between these two people. And that is quite an American tale, from the daring adventures of John Parker to the capture and integration into the Comanche life of Cynthia Parker to the leadership of Quanah Parker. And so why am I telling you this story? Because I am very proud to say that Houston Independent School District did something profound to honor the legacy of this story and to honor Cynthia Parker by naming one of the local schools after Cynthia, Parker Elementary. Parker Elementary School is located in the Meyerland area near the Braeswood Bayou and is a part of the Houston Independent School District. And it has stood out. It has developed a niche for developing young students into successful musicians, composers, artists. Parker Elementary is really a jewel for the city of Houston, for the greater Houston area. The naming of our infrastructure, of our governmental assets, such as our roads and bridges, our airports, is an opportunity for us as Texans, as Americans, to pay homage to our great historical figures and ensure that their stories are told for a lifetime. But the question is, has the naming of our government assets become less than that? Has it become watered down and frivolous? Is it now being done to remember less than memorable characters? Or is it even being done for political opportunity? Is it being done to ensure some of our political opportunists win the next election or ensure their political future? Nancy Pelosi is a woman who generally despises America. She dislikes Americans. She has a very dark outlook on the history of our country and our people. Generally speaking, I think that she questions the entire idea that America has a moral right to exist, that America is the greatest country to ever exist. Nancy Pelosi comes from a family of wealth and has led a life of crime. On a meager salary of approximately $200,000, she has built a self-net worth into the high millions. Her incredibly successful stock market picks are clearly being done as a result of insider trading. It is also being done because she uses her position as a congresswoman to steer investments near the companies that she buys into. Everything about this woman is un-American. The only thing that should be named after Nancy Pelosi is a jail cell. And I would endorse the idea of naming an entire cell block unit after Nancy Pelosi. The Nancy Pelosi prison cell block unit. I'd like to get a second on that motion. If anybody like to give me a second.
I'll second that.
Oh, we got a second. Okay. And despite her loathing for the country, in 2023, under the Joe Biden administration, the San Francisco Federal Building was named after this wretched wench. The San Francisco Federal Building became the Nancy Pelosi Building. And you see, what the criminal elite did, see, they don't like Americans, and they always want to poke their finger in your eye. They always want to rub salt in your wounds. And so what they do, they take a woman who hates you, who despises you, who's working against you. And what they do is they name in what is the most beautiful skyline in the country, the San Francisco skyline, they name a building after her. They make you pay for it, and now this is done. But it even gets worse because this building is so ugly. I mean, it's gross. It looks like a pile of trash. And again, this is the criminal elite, again, with their reverse psychology, trying to tell you that something's beautiful when it's not. It's their warped way of thinking. And again, it's their way to malign the beautiful skyline of San Francisco at your taxpayer expense with this woman's name on it. It's all poking a finger in your eye. Thankfully, President Donald Trump is bringing an end to this nonsense. President Donald Trump issued an executive order on promoting beautifully federal civic architecture. Again, the executive order is called Promoting Beautiful Federal Civic Architecture. And as part of this new executive order, the Nancy Pelosi building is getting pulled. So it will no longer be named the Nancy Pelosi building, and it'll be sold off. Hopefully it's sold off to a demolition unit because it needs to be taken down. It's gross. And here is a quote from the president's executive order. Quote, GSA selected an architect to design the San Francisco Federal Building who describes his designs as art for art's sake architecture, intended primarily for architects to appreciate. While elite architects praised the resulting building, many San Franciscans consider it one of the ugliest structures in the city, unquote. That is President Donald J. Trump on the issuance of his executive order on promoting beautiful federal civic architecture. And so the purpose of this opening monologue is to create an exercise for you, the listener. And the exercise is this. When you see a new building being named, an elementary school, one of our local schools, a new airport, a bridge, we have to ask ourselves, does it stand up to the Cynthia Parker litmus test? Is it something that endorses the rich history of our country? Is it something that warrants being named? Is it in the spirit of 1776, or here in Texas, in the spirit of 1836? Is it in our spirit of independence and freedom? Or is it one of these political opportunities? And we need to start doing this because what we're watching an erosion of our culture. And we need to bring our culture back. We need the strong foundations of our country rebuilt on our culture, on a set of ideas that are pro-American, that are about freedom and liberty and the individual. And that's what needs to happen. And our assets, our airports, our infrastructure, our bridges, our roads, our elementary schools need to be named in that manner. And this is the Chris Heasley Show. And on this show, we will bring you all of the ideas, the content, the information that you need to take back your city, your village, your borough, your school district, your county, our Texas counties, your state, the great state of Texas, and our country. But you see, with this show, there becomes an obligation, and the obligation is on you. And the obligation is to get involved at the local level because we have to start lighting, as Samuel Adams said, the 1,000 brush fires of liberty across the country. In the state of Ohio, there are 88 counties. In the state of Ohio, there should be 88 brush fires for liberty. In the state of Texas, there's over 200 counties in the state of Texas. There should be over 200 brush fires for liberty in the state of Texas. And if that happens, magnificent things will come to be. The world will become ours again. It will belong to the individual, to the family unit, and to our spirit of freedom. And with that being said, we have an incredible show today. On today's show, we have two very interesting guests. And first, I'd like to introduce the Katy ISD, Katy Independent School District School Board President, Victor Perez. Victor, how are you doing today?
Good morning. Good morning. Good to be here. Thank
Good.
you very much for having me.
Very glad to have you second time on the show. Very good to see you again.
Thank you.
And we have running for Sugar Land City Council, Rob Boettcher. Boettcher, I apologize.
Just ignore the O.
I did spell it right, though, by the way.
There you go.
Because you got the two T's in it. And Rob, again, tell us what you're running for.
Yeah, so I'm running for Sugar Land City Council at large, position 2. And that covers all of Sugar Land, all the districts 1 through 4.
Great. Excellent. Well, we're going to get back to that.
Yeah.
And I gave a walloping opening monologue, and I want to get into all that. But before I do that, I want to ask you, Victor, you have the floor first. You're in the midst of a campaign. You're running for a re-election. You have challengers for the Katy Independent School District.
One challenger,
School board. I would say that your tenure in that position has been marked with financial success for the school board. The finances of the school have improved considerably. We'll talk about all that. But before we get into that, can you just tell me about yourself? Tell me who you are.
Yeah, thank you very much. I ran for school board in May of 22. I was elected president of the board in May of 23, and I'm up for re-election now in May of 2025. And so, again, my name is Victor Perez, and I was born in Cuba and bilingual, came to this country when I was 7 years old with my parents and my brother with a few bags that we could carry with us. And I grew up in Miami. I was fortunate enough to get a football scholarship and went to Virginia Tech, where I met my wife, and my only wife, my bride. We moved to Texas, and I got a degree in a master's in business administration from UT Arlington. Went into banking for about 12 years in oil and gas and international, using my Spanish. After that, after my banking career, I became, over the years, about 25 years of experience as chief financial officer for 2 or 3 energy service companies, including a couple of them were initial public offerings. So a lot of experience in terms of oversight over financials, over budgets, investors, rating agencies, issuing bonds, financings, et cetera. So a lot of experience in that. I think that's something I bring to the table in terms of the oversight over Katy ISD. Our 3 children are all our products of Katy ISD, and now we have 4 grandkids in Katy ISD. So again, I've got skin in the game, and I want to just really. I think we've had a lot of successes over the last 3 years during my term, but I think there's more work to do, and I just want to, continue to work hard to make Katy ISD even better than it is.
Excellent, very good. Well, I think we're in a position right now where the political class at the local level, and we have a considerable political class here, a crony class. We have what I consider to be a local version of K Street forming in our midst, both in Fort Bend County and in Harris County. And I think that they cannot wait, like a set of vultures, for these assets, for this infrastructure, new school buildings, new airports, whatever. They can't wait for our taxpayer money to be allocated towards these buildings and such, to get their name on it. And it does a lot for a political candidate. It's free advertising. It ensures their agenda for a lifetime. It places in the minds of the local citizen that they are someone of importance and someone that contributed considerably to the community. And so that's sort of was my motivation in making that opening monologue. But can you just tell me, what do you think about my opening monologue, and is this an issue locally, and is it being addressed?
So one of the things I liked about your opening monologue is that I love the book about Cynthia Parker and Quanah Parker. It's a great book. I can't remember the name of it right now.
You read the book?
Yes.
Awesome,
Yeah,
man.
it's awesome.
I've done a ton of research
I
on
love
that
that
story.
history. For many years, we drove through on the way to like Amarillo and up to New Mexico. I passed by Quanah, the town of Quanah, south of Amarillo, and I never knew who that was. And then and now I read the book, and it's an amazing historical figure.
Yeah.
In Quanah Parker.
And Quanah Parker still has a house, I think, in Oklahoma, and it's still because there's a whole issue where someone owns it, they don't want to give it up, but the historians want to get in there and restore it, bring it back to its original building, and but yeah, I mean, I find the whole story incredible. I mean, I on my runs I listen to the story. I've listened to 6 different versions of it. It's an amazing story. I'll just say one last thing. What happened is that the Texans actually got her back in another raid, and she did not adapt back into life well. And what happened is the Comanches were doing raids on the local towns, and the locals thought that Cynthia was communicating with the Comanche. And her response was, if I was communicating with the Comanche, I'd be saying, tell me when you're going to raid because I want to get on your horse and go back and live with the Comanche. So it's an incredible story.
And she did go back. Yes.
Yeah.
She did go back, I believe.
But my point being is that story warrants a school being named after it. I mean, here we are talking about it. It's an incredible piece of history. And I think that it was named, the HISD school district named it over 50 years ago. And they would never do that today because I feel like there's a toxic Marxist element in our academic elites. But I'm sorry, go ahead, please.
So it's funny that you bring up that topic about naming of facilities. We have in Katy now 10 high schools, I may be off 1 or 2 here, but about 18 junior highs and about 47, 48 elementary schools. So a lot of naming has taken place, and we have some excellent namesakes, people that are excellent educators, had a career as educators in Katy ISD, and also people who continue to contribute to the district via their involvement with the schools that they were named after. So really tremendous people. Having said that, our board currently and has recently been looking at the process for naming schools. For example, we want to make sure that the committee that's set up to recommend namings, if you will, of a school, like say a new school we're about to open, that committee has broad community involvement. We want more parental involvement, more community involvement, and not to be a very small committee that's maybe where maybe the insiders or board members or what have you outnumber the parents.
And has that been the case in the past where it's like sort of political insiders?
Yes, and the process itself needs to improve and be tightened up with that respect. And we also want to make sure that the committee members, sometimes we see applications which are voluminous, with tons of newspaper clippings, bios, recommendations, etc., that the committee members really can deliberate on those and have a lot of time, ample time to deliberate on who gets picked for a naming. So some of those are the criteria, and to make sure we have a quorum. It's a process. It's an important process. And we just want to make sure that it goes smoothly, that we have a good, solid process. Again, not to take away from the naming that's happened in the past, because we have some great people that are namesakes currently. They contribute a lot, but the process just needs to be evaluated and looked at and tightened up in terms of how we do it.
All right, so you texted me and you said, hey, I want to give, there's a couple of subjects that I want to talk about and, give an update on the state of Katy schools and the state of this election. And so, give me that, tell me what you want to talk about as far as Katy schools, as far as, what is the pertinent issue right now and how are the finances?
Okay, so basically right now, as you know, the state legislature is in session. And so, public education is high on the list. This session is kind of being called the education session, if you will, because not very much was done, not as much as we have liked. Was done in the last session, in the 88th. This is the 89th, and so, my role as trustee of the school board and president of the school board is basically to advocate for Katy ISD and to advocate for public education, because Katy ISD is, and we're doing that. We're doing that. Katy ISD is still growing. Again, we're going to probably have to build some additional schools in the future. We have close to 100,000 enrollment. The budget is $1.3 billion. We have about 13,000 employees, of which about 6,500 to about 7,000 or so are teachers. Teacher retention is still a huge issue. We need to maintain our teachers, keep our teachers, improve their job satisfaction and their lives, if you will, because a lot of them burn out and just leave the profession. So that's why funding, school funding and public education is so important, in that we need to make sure we provide and compensate fairly the teachers. We also need to make sure that they're not overly burdened with administrative tasks. We need to help them with discipline issues, protect their planning time. Just a lot of issues there related to teachers that are kind of wrapped into, if you will, some of the educational bills that are being discussed. And of course, we need the funding to be able to do that, assistance with the funding to be able to do that, as well as so we can provide for, our special education enrollment is really growing. Career and technical education, I think, is really important for the future, because these are skills that we need in our district as well as in the country overall. Not everyone is interested in going to college or should go to college. And also safety, to make sure that we tend to get a lot of mandates, but they're unfunded mandates. And so we need to make sure, for example, that we're very, very strong in terms of safety for our schools. So and we need to make sure that whatever funding or assistance or whatever we want to call it, that we have, any resources that we have, we're focused in the classroom. That's what we need to be focused, is in the classroom, to support the teachers, to support and improve student outcomes. Well, so that's a big issue right there. That whole, I know I threw out a lot of things, but and public education basically is providing so much these days in terms of the entire student, if you will, as well as special needs of children that come to public schools. And so it's an enormous responsibility and requires a lot of financial resources.
And what is the state of your race right now?
So I have, I'm running for, my position is position 1, again, and it's at large. So Katy ISD position 1. And I have one opponent, and he is basically I'm the only conservative in the race, let's put it that way. He is what I would call a district insider, a career administrator, that retired about 3 years ago, and he, the biggest function of the school board is oversight. We have to remember that it's oversight, and it's not to micromanage the district, but to have oversight over the superintendent, and to have oversight over the district, and so I take that very seriously, both in terms of student outcomes, our spending, et cetera. So it's a broad range of things. And so I question a former administrator, a former educator, if you will, that just recently worked for the superintendent, to come in and really provide that oversight over his old boss and over his previous colleagues. So again, I am the only conservative in the race, and I provide and bring to the table that oversight that we want on our board.
I mean, what I hear from you is the quintessential argument of what we're living through today, which is that, as I understand it, you have an impeccable business career. You've been a CFO, you've been a chief financial officer, you have a strong financial background, and you're basically saying that you're coming to the school to fix the finances and the overall operations from an objective standpoint, versus your opponent, who's been sort of always been a part of the schools. He's an insider. He comes from inside the schools. You're the outsider coming from the business world, with that perspective, he's been inside the schools, working in those schools for his career, and that's of course we're seeing that at the national level, right? That is the whole clash that we are in today. Do I describe that right?
Yeah. Now I do want to say that I'm not. I'm not. By the way, I'm here talking for myself, not for the school board or Katy ISD. I'm speaking for myself. So I'm not representing, though, that the finances needed fixing necessarily, because we have a really good financial
But don't
staff.
finances always need improving?
What we need is questioning. We need to get down in the numbers, get down in the weeds. We don't need to be just rubber stamping everything that's presented. And that's what, and I have that experience, if you will. I set up and we didn't have one before. When I became president, I set up a financial committee, and we meet with the CFO and his staff once a month before our work study meeting. I also set up 2 meetings a month, like a work study meeting and a regular meeting. And so before that, we meet with the finance staff in our finance committee. We ask questions. We drill down into the numbers. We look at get presentations. So it's really a lot more rigorous than what we used to have, where we would show up and, the first year when I was not the president, where we would show up and basically it would be like a 10 or 15-minute discussion. And this is a $1.3 billion budget. So I think just that mentality, that attitude of oversight, is what I bring.
So essentially what you're saying is prior to this, you sort of got a rubber stamp approval, a less than 15-minute overview of a $1.3 billion budget, and that is inappropriate.
That's the way I view it.
That is an inappropriate way to handle our taxpayer money.
And I think that I've been bringing that to the table. I bring that to the table, just a more intense focus on the oversight and also on the finances, but also, with 4 grandkids in the district, I have a vested interest. I have skin in the game, not just in the finances, but also just on student outcomes, to make sure we're succeeding from as far as academic achievement. I also set up an academic performance committee to meet with the teaching and learning folks to review how we're doing, et cetera. And so basically, it runs the full gamut. It's financial, it's competitive pay for teachers, resources for teachers, and also one thing I want to bring up is I have been a champion for parental rights and community values.
Okay, I think we're going to get into that in a bit, but
Okay.
You mentioned teacher pay. How has that done under your leadership?
Well, it's been challenging because the last couple of years, especially last year, was the year we're in now. Our fiscal year ends in August 31. So the year we're in now, particularly in a lot of school districts across the country have had a lot of challenges with respect to their budgets. Okay, there's been a lot of cutting in other districts, a lot of no pays, cutting people, et cetera, that kind of thing. So over the last 3 years since I've been on the board, and the last 2 since I've been president, we've increased pay for teachers an aggregate, a cumulative of 11%. Now that's the district usually does that based on when I say a percentage, it's like off the midpoint, what they call the midpoint, but basically it's 11%. This past year, there was a move to either among some board members or the staff to either no raises whatsoever, because it would take us into a deficit, or like a 2% raise. And I was kind of being pushed by a couple of board members to hey, for me to come out in favor of the 2% raise. I said, no, I have to look at the numbers further. We haven't done our homework. I went back, looked at the numbers, met with the CFO, and figured out that we had the flexibility to do better. And so I propose, and even though it's not huge, I'd like to be able to do more. We eventually got a 3% raise approved as opposed to the 2%. And every 1% is like about $7 million more in terms of our costs. But I could see that we had the flexibility and the cushion built into the budget where we were going to come out better in terms of our liquidity, in terms of our general fund, et cetera, and that we could afford to do a little bit better. I also put in place, and this is with the help of particularly 3 other board members, by the way, conservative board members that were elected in May of 2023. And we put in place a lump sum benchmark program for teachers, where basically for years of service, like, okay, if you've been here 5 years, you get X. If you get 10 years, you get so much, 15, et cetera. It's kind of a modest program to begin with, but at least the idea that we reward your longevity and your loyalty to Katy ISD.
Okay.
Now, have you seen improved retention because of that?
It's too soon to tell. I mean,
Okay.
the thing is, our turnover, I think, is actually not too bad.
Right.
However, we still have teacher shortages. We still have teachers leaving the profession. We have teachers that maybe sometimes don't feel appreciated. We particularly have a shortage of special education teachers, SPED teachers. And so I think anything we can do to help the formula, it's not just compensation. It is compensation, but it's also, let's support the teachers with discipline. Let's support the teachers by protecting their planning time. Let's respect them. All those things weigh into, like, if somebody's leaving the profession and if they're happy, if they feel respected, if they feel, again, just respected and appreciated. So just another element, really.
So, Rob, let me hand it off to you.
Sure.
Appreciate your patience. We're in a critical race here. I want to make sure we got all. And we only scratched the surface on what's going on with Katy Independent School District.
Oh, absolutely.
But again, tell us who you are and what position you're running for.
Okay. So I'm Rob Boettcher, running for Sugar Land City Council at large, position 2. And this election is going to be an interesting one. So normally it's the mayor at large 1 and at large 2, but there's been several shakeups. So William Ferguson, he's at large 1, he's running for mayor. That opens up that seat. Jennifer Lane, she's at large 2, she's moving out to LaGrange. She's the one that actually personally asked me to run for at large 2 and has given me her full endorsement to run. So that's at large 2. We also have 2 other district members, districts 2 and 4, that's Nashad and Carroll, who have jumped in to run for mayor. And because of that, now there's a special part of the election which opens up District 2 and 4 as part of this city election. So there's going to be a lot of shakeups. There's going to be basically 5 new members, and then one of them potentially could be a current member for mayor. And that's, drawing a lot of voters out there. And we just need to make sure, in my race, I'm the only Republican. So we need to make sure that we get the conservatives out there to vote, because all elections are local, all politics is local, and it's very important that we get out there to support these local candidates. We're a neighbor of Katy. We're right below them in Sugar Land. Our school districts are Fort Bend ISD and Lamar ISD. And, that's one of the reasons I moved to Sugar Land is, it's a great, safe community. It's a great place to start to raise a family. I've got 2 kids, Lila and Liam. We just had our son over a year ago, and they will be going to LCISD. And, like Victor was saying, I've got vested community interests. I've got kids that are going up the pipeline through schools. I work in Sugar Land. I work at Schlumberger. So I work in oil and gas services. Telling about my story of how I got to Sugar Land. I grew up in Maryland. My dad was a career federal civil servant. He was actually the HR director for the Capitol Police when 9/11 happened. So you can say that was pretty interesting when I was living in the Baltimore, D.C. area. So went to University of Maryland, got my bachelor's and master's in mechanical engineering. And that's what drew me out to Sugar Land is, I've worked for both the federal government on hydroelectric power plants out in Colorado. I've worked for Baltimore Gas and Electric. That's the utility, kind of like CenterPoint here. That was in Baltimore, and that was on a liquid natural gas plant. And, with that energy background and infrastructure experience, that's what got me into the oil and gas industry. And, they offered me a job in Sugar Land. I took it and ran. I love Texas. I mean, compared to Maryland, where the cost of living is very high, there's, property taxes, income taxes, they're going to get their money one way or another. And I think that's what's so great about Texas is they're looking out for the individual and their freedoms. So, I moved to Texas, did their tech and field program, which sent me out to Oklahoma for training, went to California, which is where I met Leah. We've been together for over 10 years. Again, we have our 2 children. Lila's 9 years old now, and she's doing great. She actually has her last basketball game of the season. Her team is undefeated. So I love watching her. I've coached her team the last 2 seasons. So, again, I love living in Sugar Land. It's a great community. And, again, why I'm running to make sure that we preserve what makes Sugar Land great, but also leading us towards a more prosperous and promising future.
Well, I think that, one of the threats to a community like Sugar Land is the urban creep. And what I mean by that is that there was a time you could talk to some of the older Houstonians, and you could walk in downtown Houston, and you could take a family and go for a Sunday walk after Sunday school. And today it's a totally different story. There's vagrants everywhere. You can smell urine in the streets. It's not always safe. It's sort of gross.
Right.
And the threat is when does that come to Sugar Land? And so that's, I think, everyone's concern. What is the state of Sugar Land, and is that threat already here? Are we beginning to see bums under the bridges of Sugar Land? I know that 59 South, they're already on the West Belford. In the West Belford exit, there's an encampment that is not Sugar Land, okay? But there's an encampment of homeless. It's really gross. I don't blame those people. I blame the establishment, politicians that put us in this spot. But my point is that it is kind of going south. Is that threatening Sugar Land? Is it already there? What is the state of Sugar Land?
Right. I mean, Sugar Land is still a great place, and we want to keep it that way. Thankfully, the homelessness hasn't crept into Sugar Land. I have seen, some people panhandling and, some people under bridges, but thankfully it's not a long-term issue. Generally, it's resolved pretty quickly. We've had police come, pick them up, and take them to the right resources to help them out. So it hasn't become the same problem that we see driving into Houston. And again, that's one of the main reasons I live in Sugar Land is it's not the urban, city that Houston is. So we like the single-family homes. We like the community feel and that nature of Sugar Land, and we want to make sure we keep it that way. Now, we've realized that Sugar Land is pretty much developed out, and there's still some areas that are left for development, and we need to make sure that we develop them with the best interests of the community and those that live close to the projects in mind, and kind of preserve that feel, but also, add to it. I know there's, discussions of mixed use. I've been told by those that are on city council that they're not looking at individual, just apartment-only projects, that it would be something where it's mixed use. And as long as it fits into the, let's say, the mesh and the fabric of the community, then I think it's something that Sugar Land needs. If you look at the Sugar Land Mall area, First Colony, there's a lot of vacant restaurants, and that's one area that Sugar Land can certainly improve in as companies are moving to the Woodlands, to Katy. We've seen some of them move out of Sugar Land. We've seen Floor leave. We've seen Minute Maid and even Schlumberger cancel their headquarter project out there in the area. So we need to make sure that we're doing whatever we can to maintain businesses in the area, to attract new business, because that's what's going to bring jobs. And they certainly want to bring in the younger crowd, let's say the 20 to 40-year-old crowd. And those are the ones that are having kids and starting their families. And what makes it difficult is obviously the high cost of the housing in Sugar Land. But you could also say it's not really an entry starter place to live. I was very thankful that I worked at Schlumberger and, could afford to move into the area. And, we need to make sure that we have those good, high-paying jobs in the community. That way, the people that work there can actually live in the community where they work.
Very interesting. Okay. And so what's the state of your race? Is it, when's your election?
Okay. So election's May 3rd. It's the same time as all the city elections. And early voting starts April 22nd through the 29th. And for my election, thankfully, it's only me and one other person. Now, again, I'm the only Republican, the only conservative in the race. The other one is backed by the Democrat Party. He's got a Democrat primary voting history. So it's pretty clear what the distinctions are. Talking about the school boards and being responsible with the money, that's what all public stewards should be, is responsible with the people's money. Again, it's not the government's money, it's the people's money. So we need to make sure that we're spending it responsibly, and that's how we're going to, curtail the increase in our property taxes. And again, we don't want to be wasting money. We look at what the federal government's doing, and they're cutting a lot of that waste and abuse. And, thankfully, I don't think there's a lot of that at the local level, but we just need to make sure, again, that we're spending that money responsibly. That way we're not just unnecessarily raising the taxes on the residents.
Good deal. Very good. Well, we'll look forward to seeing how that election comes out.
Absolutely.
So one of the things Victor talked about is he talked about the role of the parent, restoring rights to the parent. And there's been obviously a sexualized agenda being placed on our children. It's really sick, dark, and gross. But it's been a imperative of the left, and they've really pushed it hard. This week, President Trump responded. I want to read you what he said. It's a forceful comment. But yeah, this is President Donald Trump. This week he said this, quote, The left-wing gender insanity being pushed on our children is an act of child abuse. The Department of Justice will investigate Big Pharma and the big hospital networks to determine if they deliberately covered up long-term side effects of sex transitions in order to get rich at the expense of vulnerable patients. My Department of Education will inform states and school districts that if any teacher or school official suggests that a child that they could be trapped in the wrong body, they will be faced with severe consequences, including potential civil rights violations for sex discrimination and the elimination of federal funding. I will ask Congress to pass a bill establishing the only genders recognized by the United States government are male and female, and they are assigned at birth, unquote, President Donald J. Trump, 45-47, President of the United States. So tell me, you're a family man. What does that comment mean to you? Do you think that our children have been mistreated? Do you think that there's been a push to take our children out of their natural state into this sexualized state? Do you think President Trump's comments are warranted, or is he way off?
I mean, I think there's some warrant to that. You look at what's going on with, whether it's, the media that you see on YouTube or even on the TV shows, you see a big push for whether it's a sexualization or the questioning of one's identity. And, when I grew up as a kid, none of that was around. And you see it becoming more and more prevalent, which is unusual. It's strange. And to try and normalize it, I think, is what's unusual about society today.
Victor, what do you think? Is there a sexual agenda targeted at our kids?
So part of the reason that I ran for school board is I started in 2021. My wife and I, I had just recently retired from the energy services industry as a CFO, and okay, what are we going to do now, right? So we started going to school board meetings. We have, as I mentioned, 4 grandkids in Katy ISD, and I started speaking out about, for example, some such topics as the American Library Association, right, which is totally a woke, agenda-driven organization that it's that wants to indoctrinate our librarians, for example. Even the Texas Library Association as well. Some of the awards that some of these books get aren't the awards that we used to trust and be familiar with, years ago. So I started speaking that way. My wife started reading, and as well as with some other ladies, some other people started reading some of the books that were in the libraries out loud, and it was pretty disgusting. So that's kind of what got me motivated, if you will, and really paying attention was after COVID, coming to the school board meetings and really focusing on that topic. Okay, so since that time, I'm proud that our board has passed, with my leadership, has passed some what I would call landmark policies, sort of trailblazing policies. For example, in July of 2023, we passed a tightened library policy as far as books, as far as sexually explicit material, vulgar material, pervasively vulgar material, obscene material, etc., to get rid of these books that are in the library. We established a more robust challenge process where parents could go and challenge books, and we put more parents on that committee. Then in August of 23, that's why I say trailblazing, because way before what's happening now, in August of 23, we put in place, and it only got a 4-3 vote, if you will, 4-3 approval, if you will. Three board members voted against it. But we put in place a policy that we call parental authority and gender fluidity matters, where basically it had certain features. One is providing guidelines, for example, for teachers. Don't ask kids about the preferred pronoun. You don't need to go there. You don't need to ask that. We were hearing that was happening from time to time. So don't ask kids about the preferred pronoun. If a child comes out and says they want to change their name, they want to be called by a different pronoun that's inconsistent with their biological sex, then the teacher and we set up a procedure for somebody else to do that besides the teachers. An administrator on the campus has to get parental approval. We do not want to, it's not the school district's business to be socially transitioning a child. So once a child comes out, if they want to change their name, you have to get parental approval. And if you get parental approval, even if you get parental approval, the teacher, we want to respect their First Amendment rights. We want to protect the teachers and everybody else on the campus. They're not required to use that pronoun because they may not be comfortable with it. We also said that in the classroom and in the curriculum, and that's all about parental rights, right? It's all about parental rights. Let's not keep secrets from parents. The parents are the best ones to be in the driver's seat to know what's best for their children. And we also put some prohibitions, if you will, on teaching in the curriculum, anything in the curriculum or in the classroom that teaches gender fluidity. And then on top of that, we put, of course, the restrictions on or prohibitions on any on privacy spaces, like to protect girls in their bathrooms and locker rooms and things like that, as well as, of course, in sports. So we put all that in place. It was very controversial. We had like 90 to 100 people turn out, and mostly people that were activists that were organized that screamed all kinds of things at us on the board. But we got it passed by, again, as I mentioned, a vote of 4-3. I want to give a shout out to the other conservative board members, Mary Ellen Cuzella and Amy Teamy and Morgan Calhoun, that were elected in May of 23 and joined me on that. And then more recently in August of 24, we enhanced further the library book policy, where we, for elementary and junior high, we said we won't have library books that promote gender fluidity because it's educationally unsuitable. So it doesn't mean that they're necessarily sexually explicit or vulgar, but they're educationally unsuitable, at least for those ages. And then for high school, you need parental opt-in for those things. So we put this in place, and I might add that we put these things in place, again, I think early on, and it's been, some parts of it or all of it have been emulated, if you will, by other school districts around the state. I'm proud of that. It's kind of spread. And
that's why you had so many activists there trying to put your fire out, because they knew you were setting the template and the model for the rest of the state of Texas.
And it's still the same people that come after me today, in my reelection. Those same people, and some of it is kind of a combination of the far left and a combination of the conservatives, in name only conservatives, that are not really conservative, but try to unite to really come after us conservatives on the board. I might also add, when you asked me earlier about my race and the status of my race, et cetera, and my opponent, is that my opponent's wife is a retired librarian who is one of those that on a couple of occasions has spoken out against us, against our tightening up on our policies with regard to what's available in the libraries. And so when I say that I'm the only conservative in the race, that's an indicator to me as far as that. And also, my opponent currently is working for a liberal lobbying group called Coalition for Educational Funding, which is headed by a very liberal gentleman named Charles Luke. So that, his involvement there, as well as the position, again, his wife's not running for school board, but yet, I question whether if he had been on the board rather than me, would these policies have been put in place?
Well, I would say that this battle has heated up a bit, because at the state level, Senator Angela Paxton has introduced a bill that would safeguard our school libraries against sexually explicit books. Oh, this is only common sense. Why would anybody not support this? We have to question the intentions of these people who are pushing these positions of sex on our kids. Here's her quote. Quote, "This is state Senator Angela Paxton, Republican out of McKinney, Texas, and she authored Senate Bill 13. This is her quote. Quote, "The presence of sexually explicit books in the school libraries is indeed still a problem in our state," unquote. So she's introduced this bill. Rob, I mean, what do you think? Do you think that there's a place in our schools for, and the materials that Victor's talking about, I've heard these materials. This is not Playboy magazines, okay? This is grotesque, unthinkable sexual acts that not even adults should entertain, okay? Rape and incest and the most disgusting ideas being placed in our children's minds. For what reason? What's your opinion on that, Rob?
Well, I mean, I agree. A lot of those books are just pure garbage. Now, I would have to see the bill to see what they even mean because, I mean, think about it. Some of the classics we read, To Kill a Mockingbird, some of them have some sexually explicit scenes, and it would have to go into what defines to where the book has to be not allowed or on. Yeah. So I think there's more to it than an easy yes, no. And, obviously I'm not the one running for school board. So I'm going to pass this over to Victor over here.
So actually, those of us that have really focused in on this topic, some of the pushback we've gotten from the haters, if you will, the people that call us book banners, and a lot of times when they call us book banners, they call us, Christian white nationalists, all kinds of stuff. Some of the pushback we've gotten is like, well, you would have banned, Anne Frank, or you would have banned, Huck Finn, or you would have banned To Kill a Mockingbird. Mm-hmm. Nonsense. Nobody's about banning that. We're talking here about very sexually explicit material, descriptions of sexual acts. We don't need that in the schools. And, I hope that bill that you're talking about does help. And I haven't read it either. But there was a bill passed, HB 900, in the last session called the Reader Act that helped with that. And there's something, we have the Texas Penal Code, right, where you can't present to minors certain things that are sexually explicit. However, what they fall back on a lot of times, the other side is, well, it may be sexually explicit to you, but I don't think this is sexually explicit. It becomes very subjective as to what is sexually explicit. Or if you have to go through like several pages of trash, but in the end it's a good moral, it was a happy ending or it sent a good message, then that's okay, right? So no, we shouldn't have to. Our kids shouldn't have to read several pages of sexual acts in order to get to a good message. There's better. We can do better than that. We can do better.
It's everything about these people is a con job. What you're doing is, when my parents were over me, the idea that pornography would be exposed to me, no. No one would even suggest such absurdity. But these people are trying to pass off pornography as somehow intellectual stimulation for the mind of children. There's some perversion in there. There's some sickness amongst the left that's brewing, and I think that we just need to call it out. It's really
and that's what I was saying earlier, is how that odd behavior, the fact that they're trying to push like sexualizing these books, putting little cartoons in them, and it's, again, for entertainment value to them, but frankly it has no interest for us to be read. But that's becoming more and more normal to them. Again, when we were children, these books weren't in the libraries. This wasn't a problem that we dealt with 20, 30, 40 years ago. And yet here we are seeing it become a hot topic because this is just being pushed on our society as a whole.
Yeah. Well, hopefully Angela Paxton's bill, provides some protection for our children. Mm-hmm. So, guys, I want to finish up with a loaded question. Okay. Rob, you're going first.
All right, let's do it.
Do you drink tap water?
I do.
Okay. Victor, do you drink tap water?
I do, but we have a filter in our house.
Oh, that doesn't count, man. No. I mean, from the spigot, like you did when you were a kid. Do you go over, put the glass of water there, and straight from the kitchen sink?
Less and less these days. And I grew up in a time when, if you were working outside, for example, or you're a kid or whoever it was working outside, it was so delicious to drink from the garden hose, right? I love drinking from the garden hose, right? and now you see just everybody with their plastic bottles.
Yeah.
So anyway, I came from the day when you loved drinking from the garden hose.
Hey, I don't know what it was, but during football, that little watering
That's right.
station we had, that water used to taste amazing.
Oh man, how about at the community parks? There's the water fountain, and you got to push the button in really hard because it's already been depressed too much
Right.
to get a little sip of water, and you're just like dying to get that water. Anyways, I drink it too, so but the reason I say this stuff is because we are in really fascinating times. I mean, all of our foundations are being overturned. It's just incredible times. But Texas Agriculture Commissioner Sid Miller is throwing his full support behind Republican president nominee Donald Trump, but more importantly, Robert F. Kennedy's plan for Make America Healthy Again. And he has said something to the effect of he's okay if we ban fluoride from our water. Now, we were always told, I remember I did a trip to China in college, and we wouldn't drink their water because it didn't have fluoride in it, because we were told fluoride was something that strengthens your teeth, all of this stuff. But now we're learning it's a heavy metal and that it leads to decreased cognitive abilities. The greater the amount of fluoride in the water, the less intelligent the community becomes. Somebody did that, okay? You can call me a conspiracy theorist. I don't give a gosh darn. That was a conspiracy. You do not poison someone's water. It was a mistake. It was an accident. No. But by the way, this happened in the 1920s when they had an overproduction of fluoride. They had to sell it somewhere, so they hired a propagandist to begin promoting the idea that fluoride was good for your teeth, and they got it in our water, and they started making us dumber.
So they still had lead pipes too?
What's that?
I said, is that when they still had lead pipes too?
Yeah.
For the water?
Yeah.
I have to admit that we at home we only use fluoride-free toothpaste, for example, but that's because my wife said we're going to start using fluoride-free toothpaste. I was just listening to in the news about the push about tallow versus seed oil, which that's a huge deal, and I'm all in favor of that, of using the tallow. We're back to butter. We use olive oil at home, and no margarine, no seed oil. It's something of our upbringing, and part of it is that our American diet over the years has just been so horrible with these, the French fries with seed oil. The burgers, which I love, but just if you look at it's going to take a while, and I support Bobby Kennedy and his efforts. It's going to take a while for it to be to make it have an effect, but I support just making America healthy again.
I mean, like, my wife comes home and she says, "Why is Bobby Kennedy and Donald Trump eating McDonald's cheeseburgers?" Right there, they did this big photo op where they're eating it. I said, "I don't know, but there's a plan. Just relax for a minute." The next day, Bobby Kennedy comes out and says, "We will begin making fast food healthy again." Why shouldn't it be healthy? They're putting additives and components into it. This stuff's well documented. They're putting stuff into it that is killing us. And so why is the idea that we can make our fast foods healthy so inconceivable? I absolutely think it's possible, but I want to put it back on both of you. Can you imagine going to the McDonald's? Can you imagine going to the Burger King and getting healthy food?
So I think that's really important to do that with fast food, because it's the lower income people that can't afford, for example, organic stuff, that can't afford certain, like really to eat healthy the way we want to eat healthy. So it's got to be across the board. It's got to be in the fast food, the burger joints, et cetera. It's got to be across the board, because the wealthier people, the ones who can afford it, can afford to eat healthier. They can afford to eat clean, if you want to call it that. They can afford to eat organic, that kind of thing. So I think it's a really big push, and I welcome it it's going to benefit a lot, everybody, but also low-income people.
Well, there's another reason why it should be done, and it's because fast food burgers taste incredible. I mean, they're baiting us with this stuff, I'm all for it. But I found Sid Miller's quote. He said this. He said this about fluoride. He said, "quote It probably does help prevent cavities, but I don't want to have good teeth and be ignorant." Unquote. Sid Miller. And essentially what he makes and then he says, "quote I don't want to have a low IQ. I'd rather have a high IQ and let me brush my teeth and take care of my dental hygiene without the fluoride in the water." Unquote. I mean, I think that quote is brilliant. I don't agree with him on the teeth. I think that it doesn't help the teeth, but we can have that discussion another day. But yeah, absolutely. I mean, that is seriously concerning. Okay, so let me ask you this. Do you think we will ever get to a point, now I'm putting you a little bit in the hot seat.
Yeah.
Do you think we'll ever get to the point where they pull fluoride out of our city water?
Out of the city water? I mean, I would have to see the studies. I think that's going to be the number one thing is what are the pros and the cons? I mean, that's how any city councilor should be making their decisions. But does the good outweigh the bad? And if the answer to that is yes, then I can see it as being removed.
So, that's a really great answer because the whole point was of the left is to pressure candidates like you into saying no, the option is off the table. Gosh darn it, I'm gonna do fluoride and I'm gonna do vaccines and all this stuff, right? We won't get into that, but my point being is there's always a pressure on the candidate to make a forced decision now without seeing all the facts, understanding all the arguments, and you're saying that you are open to the greater arguments and you'll make your decision from there.
Absolutely. I want to see the facts. And that's what's so difficult, again, in our current society is you have to look at who's funding the research. I mean, that's going to play a significant role in which direction the research even goes because sometimes they're paid to have a particular finding. So you need to do your due diligence, make sure all the information is presented, make sure the science is sound, and that everybody's honest in the process. And if that's the case, then you can make a decision based on the information.
What do you think? You think it's going to happen that we actually pull fluoride from our water? They made the argument on Joe Rogan. They said that it's just so in our psyche that you have to have fluoride in water that no city councilman, no mayor is going to ever really propose the idea. But I think we're getting to a breaking point where it's possible. What do you think?
I haven't thought about it. I don't know. I don't know where everybody stands on the fluoride. It's probably going to be, I would think a town by town, city by city kind of decision up to the local cities to determine. And it could be as usual, like certain cities are just not willing to look at that, and certain ones are more progressive, meaning in a good way progressive in terms of like getting on board with let's be healthy.
Well, I'm the optimist, and I'm going to go ahead and put my money down, and I'm saying we will see healthy McDonald's hamburgers. I'm going there, and I'm going to say that we will also see fluoride, water free of fluoride. I'm going to go ahead and put my money down there.
I agree 100% with that. I'm for that for sure.
Good deal. Well, it's great to have both of you on.
Thank you very
Let's
much.
just
Thanks
finish
for
up
having
real
us,
quick
Chris.
here. Again, Victor, when is your election?
So just like Rob's, early voting is the 22nd through the 29th of April. I urge people to vote early, and then election day is May 3rd.
Excellent. Very good.
I'm going to hold this up for everyone. Yeah, elections May 3rd. Make sure you get out there and vote. Victor and I are the only conservatives, Republicans in our race. So if you know Republicans that don't get out there and vote in the city elections, make sure you remind them, get them out to vote, get your friends, your neighbors, because that's how we're going to win these local elections and make sure we maintain our conservative local elections.
I just want to add my website is Victor Perez for KatyISD.com. Victor Perez for KatyISD.com. If you could go there, check me out, donate if you're comfortable, but check out my website.
Excellent. Very good. Well, I appreciate both your time.
Thank you.
I found this to be a really incredible hour. I really enjoyed it. Had a great talk. Again, we're in incredible times. We could talk all day long, but thank you both for being here. And this is Chris Heasley with the Chris Heasley Radio Show. We will be back next Saturday, 10 a.m. with one more Hot Topic.